Good afternoon and welcome back once more to the workbench, where I have some tomfoolery afoot, or possibly just foolery for myself. So as is probably obvious by the title, I have a DVI to HDMI cable which I'd like to repair, if that makes any sense, which it doesn't really. Economically it probably makes no sense at all, but hey, you know, where's the fun in that, to just go and buy another one. So the story behind this, recently my graphics card in my main computer failed. Well, it didn't fail outright, but started crashing in games and having problems. I don't know. I'm yet to have a look at it and see if I can fix it, but yeah, anyway, it wasn't working. I really needed the computer to work, so I just bought a new graphics card, which unfortunately only has one DVI output, which is annoying because I have two DVI monitors that I like to use, and now I can only use one, which is kind of bugging me now. So I thought, well, I could buy a new, I could buy an HDMI to DVI cable or an adapter or something. But then I saw that I had this lying around. Now this cable here has got a DVI plug on the end there, and it's got nothing on the other end here. And the reason for that is this is one a friend of mine had running through his wall, and I'm not entirely sure what exactly happened, but at some point he cut the HDMI plug off the end to get it out of the wall, for whatever reason. So it's no longer there, as you can see. Or maybe you can't see, because it's not there. Anyway, so I bought this HDMI plug thing on eBay. I figured, well, you know, let's have a go and wiring this onto here and see if that's possible. And hopefully it is, because otherwise I would have wasted my money. This was not immediately obvious that these actually existed. If you search for HDMI plug, you know, solder plug, whatever, you just get the little connector on the end, basically by itself, with no backshell, no housing, no nothing, and you have to try and solder, you know, 50 wires or whatever it is into some tiny little thing, which might be great if you're you know, a factory in China or something, but not very good for anyone else. But if you search around a bit more, you can find these, and they sell these in two different versions. There's this version which I got, which is a metal housing, and you can also get a slightly cheaper plastic housing version. I went for the metal one because I figured, yeah, it might be better for shielding, because the whole point of this is that instead of having just the bare connector that you have to try and solder directly onto, this has a little breakout board PCB that the connector is soldered onto, and then they've got pads for all the different connecting wires inside here. So you solder the wire to the PCB, and then that goes to the connector, rather than trying to solder the connector directly. And I figured there would be some exposed wiring in there, you know, from the actual shield end to the PCB, and probably a good idea to get a metal shielded case and, you know, try and connect that to the screen inside here and actually get some kind of shielding. I don't know, the plastic one might have metallized shielding inside, but I doubt it. So I thought this was a better choice to get the metal one. You get the connector housing and everything itself. You get 4 screws to hold it together. The only thing annoying with this is, yeah, there's no so you can see how this works. It's got the little board there. There's no kind of cable clamp of any kind. There's nothing in the end there. They've got a kind of a vain attempt at something like that, with some little spikes about half a millimeter high or less inside this bit here, which probably really wouldn't do much. Cable's actually too large to fit, well, too small I mean, to actually fit in there. It's not going to grab on those, it's just going to pull. So there is enough space here though between that I can probably, I'll put some heat shrink around this maybe, and put a cable tie or something, and then maybe hot glue it in or something to give it some rigidity. Get a big enough cable tie, it should be able to grip against the back of this, so that should work. But yeah, it's just this little board in here. So you've got the pins there, they're just labelled with the numbers, so I guess that corresponds to the numbers on the connector, so I'm going to have to look up a pinout and everything and find out what connects to what. So this is yeah, an HDMI connector, but DVI and HDMI are practically the same thing in terms of electrically they're the same, really, for the video side at least anyway. Obviously DVI doesn't carry audio, although it can carry analog video. That's why you can get the DVI to VGA adapters. So from that though, it's just a matter of finding out the pinout of this. So finding out which pins connect to which wires in here, and then finding out which pins of these I need to connect that to make it work. So I'm going to have to look that up online and find out, but otherwise it should be fairly simple. Just a basic case of connecting the right connectors to the right things. So yeah, I'll just be doing that. Yeah, you could also buy a version that had screw terminals pre-soldered onto here that you could then screw these into, but I figured that doesn't really make any sense. Alright, so I think the most logical way to do this would be to cut up this side a bit. I just cut here. Okay, so I've got a good amount to work with, and I can trim it back shorter afterwards. So we've got a pretty thick braid here, which obviously I'm going to try and connect to the shield of this somehow. I don't know if I can be able to solder it, probably not. And then we got this other shielded stuff here, and then we've got various pairs of wire which are all individually shielded pairs. So obviously you want to keep like I said, these ones you want to keep the same length, you want to keep the twist to it, make sure that's alright. The colours of these I have no idea if these are actually, there's the ground wire, so I don't know if the colours of these are correct or not. Obviously you can get a list of colour codes on the internet, but whether or not these are the correct colour codes, so I will have to check these and see if they match up with the pins on here. And in terms of stripping these, I might strip these with my soldering iron by just melting the insulation off. They are quite thin. I don't know if I could use a mechanical wire stripper for that. I might just break them, rip them off. So yeah. Anyway, let's look up online and find out what's going on. Alright, so I got the DVI pinout here from Wikipedia, so hopefully that's correct. So over here is the analog section. We don't have to worry about this because this is purely a DVI digital cable, so all that's irrelevant. And also the data link too, so pairs 3, 4 and 5, those aren't used in this cable either, so all we're really worried about is these light blue ones, these pink ones, this yellow one, these yellow ones, and these green ones. HDMI doesn't support 2 links anyway, so it only has these 3 sets of data in the clock. So yeah, so now that I know which one of these is, I can look at this pinout here of the HDMI, and we can see, you know, how that's supposed to be connected. So you've got the same thing here, channel 0, channel 1, channel 2, clock going there, and display data connection here, plus 5 volts for the screen and everything. And then I don't know what CEC is exactly. We've got this option here, so this shows these 4 pairs of cable. The colours of these match up, but this one here has completely different colours for what I'm looking at, so I don't know, you know, that my cable here has a pink wire, but there's no pink wire on this. And also I don't have a green or a blue that's separate. I've just got the or a grey. I have a grey and a pink which don't show up on this, and I don't have a green or a blue. I do have white, purple and red, and orange and yellow, but I suspect that, you know, some of these are obviously going to be different, so figuring out those and figuring out if the colours that are there actually match up with any of these is obviously what I need to do. So forget about the colours for now. I won't forget about them. I'll test that colour that it says here first and see if that makes sense. So for example, on here it says red is CEC. I don't know. There is nothing here called CEC, so I have no idea what that actually is. I'll have to look that up, I guess. I mean, we have 5 volt here. This is 5 volt is white, That should be pin 14, so I can test from pin 14 to the white cable, see if that is continuity. It may not, it may actually go to red, because red is often used for 5 volts as well. So we'll just do that, and then with all the other ones I'll verify that and make sure it all makes sense, and hopefully most of the colours will actually match up with the ones listed in here. Should be mostly correct. I expect these ones probably the same, but yeah, anyway. Alright, so I've stripped the end off the white wire there, so I've got that hooked up to this test hook to the multimeter in diode test mode, and according to that other pinout, white should be the positive 5 volts. So according to the DVI pinout, that should be this pin here, which is actually slightly shorter than the rest, so presumably it's designed to make contact last. So if I, well, can we see that? I'll do it from this side. So if I touch this on here, well, surprise, surprise, we get nothing, because obviously it's not that pin. I suspect the red one is positive 5 volt. So let's just try all the other ones. It's not pin 6, which is DDC clock. Is it pin 7? No. Is it ground? It's not ground. Is it hot plug detect, whatever that is? Oh, no. Is it clock shield? Nope. Any of these clocks? It's interesting. Getting connection to TMDS clock plus. Pin 23. Okay. The interesting thing with that is that the apparently that's supposed to be the one of the brown pairs, which is separately shielded in one of these little separate things for signal integrity, but apparently it's not. Apparently that's completely different. So that's quite amusing. So it looks like this thing makes absolutely no sense. Oh, it makes sense, but yeah. Okay, so let's try the purple one. So purple, according to the diagram, that's reserved for future use and doesn't exist, but I suspect it will be in fact used for something in here. So let's just see. What do we got here? Yep, that's pin 16, hot plug detect. Red is connected to TMDS clock shield, pin 22, so red is ground. That makes sense completely. So again, no idea what this grey and pink are for, seeing as they're apparently connected to nothing. But yeah, there's our power. 5 volt. I mean, there must be a DDC connection somewhere, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to detect the monitor and or the TV or anything this is actually plugged into. Oh dear, so I've just finished checking all the pinout for this, and mostly it all kind of makes sense, but there's just a couple of things that don't make any sense at all. So for some bizarre reason they've decided to go with the this red and this white here, just unshielded, untwisted, nothing to do with anything. They've used that for the TMDS clock plus and shield, so white is clock plus and red is shield. And then for the DDC clock and data, so for DDC clock they've used this shield wire for this blue and white pair. For the DDC data they've used the blue connection here and blue wire here, and this white wire here, which you'd think would be something to do with DDC. No, that's actually connected to pin 8 on this, which is analog VSync, which doesn't even make sense because this is a DVI-D plug and the other end's an HDMI plug, so there's no need for that whatsoever. And why is it in the same pair as the DDC data? And why is half the DDC data on this other completely separate wire? I mean, they could have used they could have used it a lot more sensibly than that, but I don't know. Very odd. The other weirdest thing here though is that the TMDS clock plus is is there, but the TMDS clock minus is nothing. I assumed it would have been the pink or the grey, but there's absolutely no connection between these wires with any of the pins on here. And I thought, well, maybe there's actually a break in the cable somewhere. But getting the other end that my friend had cut off, I connected to both these wires here with the multimeter, which I can just show again here. So I've connected to both these at the same time, and this should give a connection to pin 12 on this, which is TMDS clock minus, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. Should be that pin there, and we get nothing. There's absolutely nothing there at all. So yeah, I wouldn't believe it's broken on both ends for that exact same wire. So I think, to my mind, this cable is just bizarre, and they just haven't connected that. They've also connected the analog VSync, which is completely unnecessary, and they've done weird wiring with these two pairs. They could have used that the opposite way. Would have made more sense, but oh well. Yeah, I mean, my friend did use this cable for a while, and it did clearly work, so it's obviously not terrible, but it does seem kind of strange that they've done that. I don't really understand. This thing either doesn't adhere to the spec properly, I guess, or maybe it doesn't have to. I guess you can get away with it, but yeah, ultimately though, I guess it's not really really proper. So it just goes to show, you know, just because you buy some nice looking cable with gold plated things, doesn't mean it actually makes sense. So yeah, who knows? Well, I guess now that I've got that all sorted out, I'll have to solder the thing together and see if it works. So yeah, here's the table I drew up here. It all mostly makes sense again, I guess, for this, which is connected for no apparent reason. The CEC thing, which doesn't exist on DVI, so that's not connected either. Pin 14 appears to be a no connect pin on HDMI, so that doesn't seem to be doing anything. That's not connected anywhere. There's just nothing there. And this TMDS clock minus is not connected to anything. So we just got two wires that go through the whole cable that just aren't used for anything. I don't know why. I assume one of them was supposed to be connected to this pin, but they just haven't bothered. Very weird. I don't know if that's just like a miswiring, or they just didn't care, or whatever, but like I said, I mean, this and this wire here, they chose that as a shield, but there's no shield there. It's just a bare wire. So what they should have done is used, the DGC clock and data don't have a shield, so they should have used these two. These two signals should have been connected with these two pins here, these two wires, and then this shield for the TMDS should be this wire, and then they could have used the blue and the white here, ignored this, and used that for the minus and plus clock for the TMDS. So I don't know. It's very, very odd. Okay, so I've cut away most of this braid here from around where I stripped it back to, and I have twisted one of the sections of that braid together with this copper wire, which is in here, which is also connected into the shield and everything. So I'm going to twist that together and solder that to the pin 20, which is the shield for the actual connector, out to outer edge. So I'm going to slide that across here with this, and just wrap the tape stuff around here, just to bulk it up on this end, and then I'm going to put some heat shrink over that to about here, maybe something like that. Heat shrink over that to hold it in place, and then I'll be able to lie this on top of here without this shield or anything possibly shorting out to any of these pads on this PCB, and then I can just route the wires and do all that. So there is enough room on here. They've got a kind of a recess there that I can bend stuff around. It looks like some of these are, especially these pairs, are quite thick, so I don't know if I have to bring this back down here or not. I mean, originally I was going to have it like that, but I think I might have to have it down the end there, in fact, just to get everything good. But yeah, trimming these will be easy, but doing these will be a little bit trickier. But yeah, overall it should be fairly easy. So yeah, it's just a case of matching up the cable colours that I've written down in the thing with the numbers on here. So these numbers on the PCB silkscreen show all the pins for this, so you know it's quite simple to do that, and just solder them on. So yeah, just have to, not a particularly difficult thing to do, I should hope. And then afterwards I'll yeah, put a cable tie around here to hold it behind this thing, and maybe put some glue if necessary. Alright, so I find the easiest way of doing something like this is to route all the cables to where they should go, and then trim them all and strip them and tin them before you solder any of them on. So that's what I'm doing here. So I've made them all the correct length. Some are longer than others, obviously. It just helps to make sure there's no mess and you don't have to try and route long cables in around and to short places and get a hold of a bunch of stuff. So you know, I cut off a lot of the long ends there. Don't really need them, so that's like that. So I'm just going to tin these ends to make them easier to put in the holes. That's definitely something which helps a lot. Arguably not worth the time spent when you could just buy another cable, but hey, I'm this kind of person that will actually do this, and some of you might be too, even if it is just for fun. I mean, I kind of see this sort of thing in a way as kind of a puzzle, you know. I mean, some people do crosswords and that, and I do this sort of thing, even though there's not exactly a need for it. It's just something to do anyway. So those all look tinned. This is the pink and grey wires. I've just looped over and put some heat shrink around so they don't do anything funny, even though they're not connected to anything. And yeah, anyway, so that's that. So now it's just time to solder this all together. So yeah, just keep going until they're all soldered. So yeah, I'll just do that and maybe skip to the end. I'm not sure there's any point in showing all of this really. Everything's nice and short and neat. I had to take off the screen braid from the other wire because it wouldn't fit through the hole, and I thought it'd make more sense just to let it sit to the back here of this heat shrink and get clamped against the inside of this when I put it together, because it's quite a tight fit there. On that bit with the heat shrink, so that should work. So yeah, I'm just going to put some just some tape on the bottom of that to make sure nothing shorts out with these. I mean, they're all pretty short, but just to make sure nothing happens. Alright, so that's bottom of that's all insulated now, so nothing funny should happen there. So yeah, just stick that in there like that. I'll put a cable tie around that to make sure it's got something to hold on to so it doesn't pull out. Bag of spare cable ties. Let's get a nice big one. That should do it. Hopefully that won't be too big to fit in there. Well, that should work as long as I get it on the side there. Yeah, that's pretty good. That shouldn't pull out. That's pretty tight with that there. That should work well. Let's put the screws in, or at least let's put 2 of the screws in. We don't need all of them, just in case it doesn't work. In fact, Murphy's Law states that if I put the screws in, put all the screws in right now, it's guaranteed not to work. Yeah, because I'm still worried about that clock, that negative clock line that wasn't connected to anything. Okay, I've got the thing plugged into this PlayStation 3 here. I was going to try it on the PlayStation 4, but it doesn't actually fit in the back. The housing on this is too big, so that's something to look out for, I guess. This thing should work okay on video cards and in a PlayStation 3, but it won't work on a PlayStation 4 and possibly other things. So yeah, good point to note out for. I didn't realise it at the time. But anyway, I'll just plug this into my monitor here. So I have to disconnect this. It's plugged into my computer. And we should see, hopefully this will work. I mean, actually I'll kind of be surprised if it does, because this thing will probably complain that this isn't HDCP compatible or whatever, or the resolution is wrong or something. So yeah, but it should probably work. It might look a bit distorted, but it should work. Or it might come up with some sort of error message, but anyway, I'll have to get out of the shot and switch my cables over. Okay, DVI from the computer comes out. DVI from the PlayStation goes in. So there we go. Let's turn it on. See if anything happens. So we should see something on there. Should see something on there. But of course we don't, because that would be useful. Nope, it's not going to work, is it? Alright, so it's a few weeks later and I finally got the thing working, and I discovered two potential issues. I'm not entirely sure which one was the problem, or if it was both of them. Quite possibly it was both. But I started measuring all the pins, obviously, from the HDMI plug to the DVI plug, just to recheck everything, to make sure everything was connected. And I did find there was a issue, aside from the TMDS line clock minus not being connected at all, which I suspect was the major problem. I also noticed that the shield connection, the ground from the outer shell of this to the other side wire, was actually, high resistance. It was like 400 ohms, and it was sort of bouncing around. If I bent the cable to and fro near the plug, I would get, the resistance would change. So it was clear that there was some sort of damage to this cable around the end of this plug. So I thought, well, that's okay, I can just buy another DVI plug and solder that on the other end. Then I'll have two new plugs and it should work fine. Although the only problem with that is you can't actually get DVI plugs to solder onto the end of cables, apparently, or at least I couldn't find any. I was able to find a solder connection for the plug itself, I think on like UT source or something, which may or may not have been a PCB mount thing, or could have been a line end mount. I don't know, but there was no backshell for it or anything like that, or at least it didn't appear to be. So I was like, well, there's no point in buying that, because it probably won't even be what I want. And that was like $5 just for that. So I was like, well, no. So I thought, well, the best option is just to buy another HDMI plug, which I did, and an HDMI DVI adapter, which I did. So this was $1, and this was about, I don't know, $3. So all in all, it was actually cheaper than trying to buy one of these, and seems to work just fine. So I wired that up, and I managed to get the TMDS clock minus connected correctly, as it was supposed to be. So that's these are both now identical, and they all have all the wires connected, and it works perfectly fine. I've used it with this adapter here, running from my computer to the TV, and that works perfectly acceptable. So the question is now, does it work from an HDMI source to a DVI display, which is what of course I want to do with it. So it's worth noting that I bought the plastic version of this time because it was cheaper, and I thought, well, if there's some other break in the cable somewhere, some other issue, I don't want to spend twice, 3 times as much buying another plug that it's just going to be a waste. So I got the cheap one. I figured, there's no shielding in this, but hey, it doesn't really matter. If I do need the shielding, I can always just put down some foil tape, on the inside of the housing, and then ground that to the thing. But as it turns out, I don't think that's actually necessary, because I didn't notice any problem with it when I was testing it before. What was amusing though was I ordered just the standard solder version, just like this one, as I did previously with that one. But they actually sent me the one with the little screw terminals, so I can show you that there, how that works. So you've got that little row of little miniature screw terminals there, and actually work quite well. I thought, you know, it could be a connection issue or something, might be a bit funny, but no, they've actually got quite nice little contacts in them and everything, and I've found it very easy to wire up. So yeah, I totally recommend getting these actually. I mean, the solder one is theoretically better, but yeah, I'd say if you just want a quick wire up an HDMI plug to a cable, or replace one that's broken or something, these are actually pretty good. These screw terminals work really well, and this plastic version actually comes with a better cable clamp mechanism. It comes with little inserts you can get, which go on here, and you can use the larger size without the insert, just as you would with this, or you can use the inserts to clamp a smaller cable like this one I've got here. So that all work really well. So yeah, okay, so now for the moment of truth. Does this cable actually work now that I've done all this to it? And the answer is yes. It does in fact work on that computer there with a DVI output. With this adapter here to the HDMI on my TV, works perfectly fine. From PlayStation 3 to this monitor here, for example, doesn't work at all. I suspect that's because the PlayStation 3 is expecting a TV with a 16:9 ratio, it's expecting something that supports 1080p, etc, etc. This monitor doesn't do that, it's all completely different, and it doesn't support HDCP or anything like that, so I suspect that's why it'll never work. But that's not the point. I just want this cable to work for a HDMI graphics card to a DVI monitor, and I've got a little laptop here which has that in fact, which I'll test it with. So there's a demonstration. You know, I've got an HDMI port on this laptop here. This is just a some old HP thing. It doesn't work properly, it's got a dead battery, it doesn't charge at all, so I don't know if that's a motherboard fault or a battery fault. I might figure that out later, but anyway, probably battery. You know, these things are not that, it's a pretty cheap model. Anyway, but let's plug this in here and we should actually get this working on there. So that'll demonstrate that this actually is functional. It's just kind of hard to show that the other way with the other computer to the TV, because everything's, you know, it's hard, you can't really get that all in shot or anything like that. So yeah, it's just easy to do it this way. So here we go. So this one, obviously that goes off, and then this one in. There we go. Hear a little noise from Windows there, and there we go. The display comes up perfectly fine. So the cable is now functioning, even though the wiring inside is still ridiculous, because we have those twisted pairs that aren't being used properly. We got the some of those screen cables that aren't screens, they're signals, and we've got random just single wires in the thing that are being used as shields, which they're obviously not. So kind of surprising it works, to be honest, but it does work in fact. So we've got the full resolution on this. Everything is working fine. So yeah, I mean, if you were doing this, if you were in fact rewiring a cable like this, and you found the original wiring was stupid like the original one here, it would make sense obviously if you're replacing both ends to wire it all proper and do it correctly and have the shields and everything all sensible, but it does in fact seem to work just fine anyway. So I guess that doesn't matter too much. I mean, I don't know if pushing the resolution on this thing would cause a problem with it. You know, it might not be able to support the highest resolutions with ease, but it does seem to work in general. So yeah, that's fine. So that should work perfectly fine on my other computer to do what I wanted. Huh, USB device has malfunctioned. That's interesting. I wasn't aware there was any USB device connected to this machine. Okay, maybe this laptop does have issues. Well, we know there's issues. Anyway, that's not relevant. Maybe that's for another video. Maybe it's find out what's wrong with this thing another time. But yeah. Anyway, so there we go. That's rebuilding your HDMI cable. Not really recommended as a cost-saving measure, because I probably saved no money whatsoever compared to just buying a new cable. But it was interesting. It was fun. It's nice to see that even factory-produced cables are sometimes completely, well, not miswired, but wired in a very strange way, and I have no idea why there was no connection between either end of this for that TMDS clock negative line. Just doesn't make any sense. But there we go. Yeah, works now. So yeah, you can get HDMI plugs on eBay. You can get metal ones like this, you can get plastic ones like that. Both of them seem perfectly fine. You can get ones with solder connections and ones with little screw terminals. Honestly, I'd say the screw terminals are actually probably a good idea. At first I thought that was silly, but they seem to work fine and actually really, well, they're a lot easier to do than soldering. And of course, if you don't have a soldering iron, or if you have, you know, one that's not that fine, you might have a big huge soldering gun, one of those old ones, you know, 150 watts or something, you know, that would just melt the entire cable. And you just do that. As long as you've got a little jeweler's screwdriver or whatever, you can use that. So yeah, hopefully that was amusing. Hopefully you learnt something. I know I did. I'm not sure what it was, but it was something. Anyway, see you next time.